Okay. Right. Look, I know what you expected, so did I. But you're not listening to me. You can get all the violence and sensationalism you want from the Middle East crew, but that's not what's happening here at the moment. Well, I happen to think it is dramatic, but not in the way either of us anticipated. Look, you hired me to get the story, right? So let me tell it the way I've seen it. Besides, I think people back home will be interested in what I've learned here in 2 weeks. Yeah, I have more than enough material. We're working on the final editing now. I'll film the closing and we'll feed it through to you later today. But with the difference in hours, it'll be there well before airtime in Atlanta, so just relax. I know it's a totally different angle, but it's an honest one, okay? Right. Yeah. Right. You too. Goodbye.
Good morning, America. Here, have some coffee.
Thanks. It could well be my last. What time do we do the satellite feed?
We're booked for 6 tonight.
That's it then. All this, and I don't even know where to start. It'll never happen. I should have told Atlanta we weren't ready.
You worry too much. It'll all work out. You've done well in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Filled with a rush of impressions that have made it feel more like 2 years.
Skies over Johannesburg. This morning, traffic is flowing smoothly on the Soweto Expressway northbound.
What did I expected? Certainly not skyscrapers and freeways. Lions and loincloths, I suppose. The lingering impressions of my youthful TV adventures with Tarzan. I'd arrived in Johannesburg on special assignment for the news feature department of a TV station in Atlanta. I was met at the airport by Henry Shabangu, sound engineer with the crew who'd be assisting me. I felt a bit like Tarzan arriving at an unfriendly village. Say, have I done something wrong? Or are you always this friendly?
You know, you guys give me real pain. You Americans are in the habit of coming to this country. After 2 weeks, you think you've got all the answers. You prosecute the feelings of my people. For your own good. No ways, man. This is our country, our problems, and we'd like to be allowed to solve them our way.
During my first week, in between interviews and unsuccessful attempts to overcome persisting jet lag with bottomless cups of coffee, I screened endless hours of library footage in an effort to educate myself on the country and its peoples. An incredibly beautiful land of extremes, roughly the size of the eastern half of the continental United States. South Africa is located at the lowest edge of the African continent. Sprawling, undeveloped rural areas lie within a few short miles from such ultra-modern cities as Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, Durban, and Johannesburg. The country is therefore an intriguing mixture of both first world and third world elements. The Republic of South Africa is divided into 4 major provinces, plus 10 autonomous black states, 4 of which requested and were granted independence by the South African government. These self-governing states reflect the traditional social systems and culture of at least 9 distinctive black ethnic groups. The total population of South Africa, excluding the 4 independent black states, is estimated at over 29 million. Of this total, 5 million are white, 3 million are colored or people of mixed race, 1 million are Asian, and 20 million are black. The complexities of the population are illustrated by the fact that of the 11 major languages in South Africa, not one is spoken by a majority of the people. I was interested to learn that while this country constitutes only 4% of Africa's surface area, South Africa is nevertheless credited with the major share of the continent's gross national product and industrial output. Based almost entirely on agriculture until about a century ago, the South African economy was transformed virtually overnight. by the discovery of diamonds in 1867 and the world's richest gold deposits in 1886. Today, the country is one of the world's great treasure houses, exporting vast quantities of minerals and metals to world markets. Everything I was learning about the growth and expansion of South Africa's economy was certainly a long way from my original images of Tarzan and his treehouse. And it was clear that this development had been made possible chiefly by the diverse collection of the peoples in this unique country. Mr. Prinsloo, thank you for getting back. My Johannesburg crew, who had several years' experience covering local events, turned out to be a microcosm of the country's multi-ethnic diversity. Mark, our white South African cameraman, Henry, our black sound engineer, and Thello, our Indian film editor, completed the trio. This could have been an editing studio in Atlanta or in any other city back home. Whatever differences they might have had were submerged in the normal routine of daily work pressures and deadlines. Thank you. Bye. Hey, you guys, you're not supposed to be so friendly in South Africa.
I thought we'd start with the crowd scene outside the stadium and then cut into the speeches.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. My introduction to the third world aspects of the country had been an eye-opener. A combination of many things I'd expected, but so many more that I had no way of predicting. Our first stop was Soweto, a large black township just south of Johannesburg, whose name had become famous during the past 2 decades, emblazoned in headlines across the world. Henry had arranged for me to talk with a friend of his, Moses Mbele, a shop foreman, and his family.
Hello. Hello.
Mark and Pixley worked well together as a team, and wherever we went, our small crew attracted attention, drawing friendly and interested groups. It was the first day of filming what would eventually amount to nearly 100 interviews I would conduct over the next 2 weeks. As we moved throughout the township, I was surprised by the variety of housing, ranging from tin hut shanties dating from 40 years ago to modern residential homes that might have been lifted from the suburbs of any American city of today. But it wasn't all work. In between interviews, there was time to absorb the colors and rhythms of Soweto, home to more than 2 million black South Africans who spoke 8 or 9 different languages. That afternoon, Henry took me to visit a shebeen, a traditional gathering of family and friends, similar to our Sunday afternoon get-togethers back in the States. As I continued to meet and interview various people, a singular fact was becoming very clear. South Africans of whatever ethnic, religious, or social background had one thing very much in common. Male or female, old or young, no matter what place they occupied in the system, each was passionately political. Towards the end of my first day in Soweto, I found myself caught up in the heated but friendly atmosphere of a political rally.
These elections that are to take place on the 26th of this present month are very, very important to the lives of the citizens of South Africa. It is indeed a history that these elections are going to take place at once.
The whole country was gearing up for forthcoming municipal elections, which for the first time were to be held on a national level.
It is a God-given right for every citizen of this country to go and exercise his democratic right in this forthcoming election.
But Soweto was just the beginning. In recent years, the central business district of Johannesburg had become the heart of one of the world's most multiracial cities, a magnet drawing South Africans together and educating them in the experience of living and working together in the new urban areas. The accents were different, but apart from that, I might have been interviewing a cross-section of people in downtown Chicago, Detroit, or Los Angeles. The shopping malls, movie complexes, parks, restaurants were similar to ours back home. And the signs I had expected separating white from black were nowhere to be found. These had disappeared during the past decade, leaving a bustling, vital, and obviously integrated metropolis. One of the most outspoken individuals I met was a high-ranking executive with the Urban Foundation, an organization funded by the private sector, which directs monies towards a variety of social projects aimed at the advancement of the black population. Mr. Musa Miami was controversial not only amongst white South Africans, but also his fellow black countrymen.
White people will have to open up their own political parties to other groups, and they must stop thinking in terms of black and white, but must think South African. And the future lies in that. Actually, my greatest hope lies in the fact that a lot of white people and black people still have goodwill. They are determined to share South Africa. They are determined, and they are beginning to see themselves as destined to live together. But the problem is how to actually achieve that. That is the struggle, because a lot of
I would continue to meet and talk with people from all walks of life. One of the more unusual encounters followed my interview with Mr. Miami.
Wait a minute, guys, I want to get this. Hey, buddy, you got a minute? I want to talk to you.
No time for Spider-Man.
Set up, guys. I want to get this.
Thanks for coming down. Would you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure. What's it all about?
I'm doing a news feature for American television. Rolling? How do you see a future in this country? Do you see a future in this country?
Yes, I do. I think as long as people start to learn to live together, I think there's a great future here.
And how do you see that coming about?
Well, it's got to start with a change of attitude. You know, at grassroots, people tend to get on very well with one another. But there needs a change of attitude right from the very top, from governmental level.
In interview after interview, South Africans were thinking and talking change. But change to many was synonymous with fear.
My feeling about the fear that whites have about black majority rule in South Africa is that they look to the north of us and see what has happened there.
I think the fundamental cause of the fear is ignorance. Apartheid, one thing it has succeeded in doing is created a polarized society where the vast majority of whites really know very little about how blacks live, what their cultures are, and what they actually think.
What lies at the heart of the South African conflict is not simply the removal of discrimination or even the dominance of one race over the other. It is the survival of the white South African, of his culture, his heritage, his language, his religion. We blacks must assure him that the price of democracy does not include his own extinction.
The fact is that there is no precedence or example in the rest of Africa that gives us much cause for comfort. We have too many examples of one-party states in the rest of Africa.
I've gone to a multiracial school in South Africa called St. John's College for the past 5 years. And there I've come into contact with a number of people of different racial origins. And my perspectives about these people have certainly changed over the years. And I think that the perspective that I have of blacks, especially today, is very different from what it might have been 15 years ago.
That does not take account
Attitudes
of
were
the
changing, but acceptance of change meant confronting two vastly opposed methods of achieving it. And on this point, the debate was heated.
I believe in a revolutionary future for South Africa. But at the same time, it would be wrong to create the impression that freedom is just around the corner. The liberation of dispossessed in this country is much further away than that. Slogans are not going to achieve liberation. Only hard work, discipline, and dedicated political activity will liberate this country.
There is no doubt in my mind that South Africa has an evolutionary rather than a revolutionary future.
I think we have come a long ways. There's no time for evolution. We've gone past that. The only way is revolution.
There's only one way to go, evolution. Revolution will only breed a further revolution and a further revolution. And as Dr. Martin Luther King says, you can't replace bad with bad because it never stops.
Well, in my opinion, South Africa is heading for a revolution because there is no way that you can give in without fighting.
I believe in every struggle. Definitely there must be some casualties. There must be some short-term sufferings whenever there is any struggle. And so that ultimately and eventually we get a long-term objective.
I don't see that there's anything wrong with committing violence against someone who is collaborating with the white establishment. Violence is justified because that person is a traitor to his own people. He is selling out his own fellow blacks. It's a pity it has to happen, but every struggle has its casualties.
In the middle of the 80s, there was a great deal of black violence, black attacking black. And black people suffered because it was all in the name of liberation. And I personally think that most people suffered who were innocent. And that was terrible because men, women, and children died for nothing.
You were there, weren't you? What was it like? How did it feel being there and taking it all down, but not being able to do anything?
I don't know.
How can you not be affected by something like that? You must remember how.
I don't remember, and I don't know how it felt, all right? Now leave it alone.
It's probably hard for you to understand. This job does that to you. We are out there, we see the reality, we capture pieces of that reality happening, and in turn we're branded as liars.
We're denied access to the people and events, and where we are able to cover the news, we still become liable for prosecution under the emergency regulations.
Well, that situation is not unique to South Africa. Well, I've seen states of emergency in Israel, Northern Ireland, Zimbabwe, Malaysia, and I've worked under harsher media restrictions.
Here, press survives at the government's pleasure. One wrong truth, and they are silent.
Press must learn to be more responsible. Then they won't be hammered.
Yes, the press should be responsible, but to the people and not the government.
But why is it that the people are always the blacks, or those who agree with their point of view? There are other people in this country. What about my people? Our roots go back more than 300 years. And it's the only country we know.
My forebears came to this country more than 300 years ago. It was vast, open, and empty country. They didn't steal anything from anybody. My family and I are not going to move. We're not going to leave this country. We have done... we have nowhere else to go.
My vision for an ideal South Africa would be political partition. I believe that to be a liberal solution, a fair one.
So my ideal government is separate states, separate development, but economically linked, so that we eventually can have a prosperous Southern Africa.
The destiny of South Africans is to be one people. True change, total change, can only take place when we reject the idea of separate ethnic and cultural groups, when we reject the concept of different nations living within one country.
Everybody has a right to have a say. It should be a completely integrated society.
That is, give the black man a fair deal. Allow him into parliament, allow one man, one vote, let them choose their genuine leaders, and you'll see what a black man is like. He's very friendly.
I do believe in one man, one vote in a unitary South Africa. I think that's the only just and fair system. I think it was the only thing that will fulfill black aspirations. And I think we've got to accept that and work towards it.
I believe in one man, one vote, yes, but not in a unitary South Africa. Because you see, not only are we a multiracial country, but we're also a multinational country. Therefore, I believe in one man, one vote for white South Africans in white South Africa, one man, one vote for the Zulu people in KwaZulu, one man, one vote for the Tswana people in Boputa Tswana, etc.
One man, one vote in a unitary political system will never work in South Africa. It can only be imposed. It will never be chosen. This is because South Africa is a plural society. No single political party could ever win a majority in the one man, one vote system in this country.
But I think that evolution will actually have the blacks working out their own power structure and the whites as well. And I know that the blacks and the whites are interdependent. We need them and they need us.
There must be a commitment on the part of all South Africans to evolving a system in which everyone is going to be able to participate. But this has to take place via negotiations.
And we might settle for an intermediary measure and method and formula until mutual trust has been established between the various race groups. And then, only then, can we actually talk of the absolute one man, one vote.
I do not believe that there are any shortcuts to black majority rule in South Africa. We must take the realities into account. Blacks and whites in South Africa must begin with the premise that we either live together as brothers or perish as bloody fools.
My vision of an ideal government or constitution is based on a power-sharing model where minority rights are protected. The Westminster system of government with the winner-take-all kind of scenario is just not acceptable to South Africa. Our government should be based on some form of federal or confederal system with a maximum devolution of power to the lowest level of government, in other words, the local government level. Each population group is best qualified to handle its own affairs, but general affairs, national affairs, and international affairs should be handled at a higher level, at a joint kind of parliamentary system.
The best constitution for this country is sort of a coalition government. If we can form a coalition government, blacks and whites, to be equally represented in parliament, and we should have our own leader, the whites should have their own leader. Okay, on matters of national interest, we can have one portfolio for that.
You know, the remarkable thing is that a real transfer of power is taking place every day as blacks in South Africa gain in economic power and improve their organizational structures. It is inevitable that this growing power will lead to new constitutional structures in which black and white South Africans will be able to participate together.
And don't forget that it was only in the early 60s that America had their own civil rights revolution. and the process of change is not yet completed, even in that finest example of Western democracy. I'm optimistic. South Africa will evolve, but our problems here are unique and more complex than in America, and change will therefore take longer.
Well, that wraps it up. Now all you have to do is your closing statement.
Don't much say the same thing now, do they? There's so many different people, so many different opinions. How the hell can I ever get one neat conclusion from such diversity?
You still got some time left. Why don't you take my car? Get out of here for a while. Parked right under the highway. You don't have to meet the crew until 4:30.
We've got to find some way to put her all together.
You've the basis of something really good here. Off you go. I'll finalize things on this end.
A little over an hour left before I shot the closing. I was feeling the pressure of time. I had to draw some conclusions. But if South Africans were struggling to find answers, well...
I believe in a revolutionary future for South Africa.
South Africa has an evolutionary rather than a revolutionary future.
Slogans are not going to achieve liberation.
The only way is revolution.
There's only one way to go, the evolution. Revolution will only breed a further revolution.
I decided to pull over at a small park and try to organize my thoughts.
The destiny of South Africans is to be one people.
That the blacks and the whites are interdependent. We need them and they need us.
South Africa is in fact undergoing a dynamic process of evolutionary change. There is an immense movement and activity within the society, and people are coming together more than ever before.
I'm optimistic. You know, the most important thing is that the hearts and minds of our people are changing.
Bringing together the majority of all people of all races who yearn for negotiation and consensus.
We can make it together if we understand each other and we give each other time.
Excuse me, can you please help us take down our kite?
Yeah, sure. Less than an hour left to meet the crew. An impression was starting to form. Diversity. Fellowship. As I drove away from the park, something began to click. Then, just as the pieces were coming together, great. A sewing machine and no spare tire. With 4:30 fast approaching, it wasn't exactly what I needed. I decided to try an old American tradition. I was in luck. Even in a country with so many languages, my simple hand signal had obviously communicated.
Thanks, fellas. You just saved my tail. Look, I'm an American television correspondent. I've got to get to the mind of the Grand Reefs. We're doing a film now. I'm
The
already...
cavalry in this case turned out to be a Mr. Nelson Sitoli, a teacher from Vista University and a group of some of his students. I explained the situation and they agreed to give me a lift to the mine dump.
Really, you've made my day. It's good to meet you all.
I finally arrived. Mark and Henry were waiting with the equipment. We only had a short time left before the sun would set. Don't worry, fellas. Only 2 minutes to the top. Suddenly, I felt ready. The children in the park, Mr. Sitoli and his students. Everything I'd absorbed during the past 2 weeks seemed to fall into place. All right, fellas. I think I've got it. Let's wrap it up. There are few places in this world, real or imagined, about which so much has been thought, said, and written as South Africa. Few places indeed about which so much is known, yet so much remains unknown. And while countless attempts have been made to extract the definitive truth about this country, the hidden truth is 1,000 times more amazing, more despairing, more heartening, more tragic, more beautiful, and infinitely more complex than one could ever imagine. For here is a country whose passion knows no restraint, no remorse, no fear, yet its soul continues to struggle ceaselessly with itself. In 2 short weeks, I have met with the frustrations and confusions of many a lifetime. I have been incensed with rage and have rejoiced. I have felt at once both betrayed and saved. I have felt helpless and have been lifted by hopes. But out of all of this, one truth emerges clearly. The future of this troubled land and its salvation can only be mapped from within, can only be forged by the peoples themselves, whose passions and whose very diversity may be their greatest strength and their greatest hope. This is Chris Galley, Eyewitness News, reporting from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well done, Chris. It's really first rate.
That was a terrific wrap-up.
I never could have done it without you.
Well, I'm off.
I'll get the tape ready for the satellite feed to Atlanta.
Thanks.
See you.
Hey, America.
You still haven't got all the answers, but you're getting there.
Take care of yourself now, okay?
Will do.
It had been an amazing 2 weeks. Exhausting, exhilarating, but above all enlightening. Henry was right. I'd arrived with so many preconceived attitudes, so few facts. And it was obvious that in the short time I'd barely penetrated the surface of the true South African story. What had begun as an assignment to cover a revolution had become an education in more than a century of evolution. That history was everywhere evident on the streets of Johannesburg, reflected in the mixtures of languages and traditions. It was also a history of cultures which had known both conflict and coexistence. A unique mixture of those who struggled for increased communication and those who, retaining a sense of humor, commented openly on the struggle through laughter and satire.
And I got special about these ones. But soon they're gonna want their own green bus service. They're gonna want their own, the vote for green people, ne? Yeah, I don't know, but in this country, anything's possible.
It was a history which shone proudly from the many colored faces of its citizens. But I had been eyewitness to something even brighter. The light of commitment to a better future, which shone in the eyes of all her people.